Italy from which I have just returned. I went to see with my own eyes a country convalescing from war. I found much of Italy, 2 years after the war, still behind barbed wire. Old army camps like this still hold thousands of homeless Italians. They are not prisoners of war, they are prisoners of peace. They are displaced persons, DPs, people with no place to go, scattered by battle the length and breadth of Italy, deported to Germany as forced labor, the bombed out, the citizens of communities that have simply disappeared from the map. I found that UNRRA had helped to collect these people, group them in depots like this, as near to their former homes as possible, and was slowly, painfully trying to return them to those homes. I also found that a camera alone cannot make a completely honest report. These happy-looking children seem to be about 10 years old, yet they are really 13 and 14. The camera cannot show what they might have looked like, and it cannot show the ones that are not here at all. And it cannot photograph the feelings of a little child who meets the UNRRA truck every day, hoping that this time it will take him and his family back to their village. When I saw that little Vito Montenelli, for that was his name, had at last gotten the blessed good news, I realized that I could best report on Italy by showing the story of one Italian family. Vito's father, working in the camp blacksmith shop, had waited 2 years for this news and had to go and verify it before he could believe it, while Vito ran to tell his mother. Maria Montenelli was busy at her job, repairing clothes, which had been sent to UNRRA for distribution, when her son told her she was going home. While his parents got their papers and belongings in order, Vito went to the camp supply room to draw his going home ration of clothes. When a neighbor came to help the Montenellis pack, it was mostly just a friendly gesture, for there was hardly a family in camp whose entire possessions couldn't be wrapped in a blanket at a moment's notice. These were the victims of a war that baby Tina never knew. Born in this camp, she never knew peace either, no more than big brother Vito, who couldn't remember ever before receiving a complete suit of clothes at one time. At the paymaster's, Montenelli collected all the money he and his wife had earned, working in the camp shops. It wasn't much, but the UNRRA directors knew that there's something about drawing wages that gives a man back his pride and self-respect. And these he would need more than money or tools when the truck took him back to his own village. For Vito, the hardest thing about leaving camp was leaving his friends behind. They were, as far as he knew, the only friends he had who were still alive. The road home looked strange and forbidding. Old landmarks had disappeared, and in their place were new ones, the rusted hulks of German Tiger tanks and American Shermans, grim reminders of what Mussolini had done to the Italy of the Caesars and the Medici, the homeland of Da Vinci and Cellini and Garibaldi, and Montenelli. This was the Italy he had fought for. As a partisan, he had fought the Nazis in the hills long before Italy declared war on her treacherous Axis partner. The truck could not negotiate the muddy road that led to the village, and it had other families to take to other towns. So the Montenellis went on foot to find the house that they had dreamed of for so long. Home, sweet home. Somewhere under that monument of rubble is the hearth for which their hearts had yearned. This was post-war Italy. I could not help but think of a little town in America that might have looked much like this if it hadn't been for the grace of God and the luck of battle. And these people, homeless in their own homeland, might have been named Jones. It seemed as though they were the only inhabitants of a ghost town. But some others had come back too, and best of all, these were cousins, the Santini. They knew the whole story of the village, how it had once been a command post for the 15th Panzer Grenadiers, how the 5th Army had taken it, then lost it again. These people were proud in a way that they had been left so much history, but they hadn't been left much else. The next morning, the sight was pretty grim, and the Montenellis almost wished they were back behind the rusty barbed wire of the camp. Sleeping in a cellar with the Santinis wasn't so bad, for now the bombers were gone. But so were the roofs. The despair of waking up in the middle of so much destruction made them realize that there was still no peace in a Europe where people had to build their fires on the ruins of their kitchens. Until the Montenellis could get settled, their kinsmen shared whatever rations they had managed to secure. There was no false pride in this village. One simply divided what little he had with his next-door neighbor, when next door was just another pile of debris. Maria was worried, not for herself or her husband, but for Vito and Tina. This cemetery of tumbled stones would have to be made habitable before it would be a fit place for children to live. Decent shelter, obviously, was the first necessity, and as the men in the village had always taken their problems to the priest, they now set off for the church. Father Marco had stayed with his church while there was still a communicant left to hear Mass. And only when its steeple had been zeroed in as an aiming point by Nazi artillery did the shepherd join his flock in the hills. He had returned to find that the roof of the house of God had suffered no less than those of his children. To the courageous priest, the heavens were roof enough for a church, but he could offer little refuge from the weather, and urged them to consult the mayor, whose responsibility it was to oversee the physical welfare of the villagers. The mayor was a communist, strange recommendation from a priest. But the village didn't yet have the leisure for political distinctions. As far as they were concerned, he was the man with the civic authority to rebuild their village. Authority? What good was title when there were no bricks, no mortar, no wood or nails? All very well to come to the mayor to offer the willing hands of carpenters and stonemasons, but all his badges and patents of office were useless to patch even his own roof. What dignity and civil authority when the village hall was as open to the weather as the homes of the petitioners? It was a discouraging picture. Maybe they had been foolish to leave the comparative security of the camp. Freedom they had, but it seemed like the bitter freedom of a maroon sailor. UNRRA seemed to have abandoned them, but aid was coming.